Hello, Noel.
This is a CBS News special report, part of our continuing coverage of America at War. From CBS News headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good morning. Here are the headlines about the war. U.S. B-52 bombers are en route from England to Baghdad. They're expected to arrive sometime in early afternoon, Eastern U.S. time, if not sooner. On the ground in Iraq, American Marines have raised the flag over the southern port of Qasr. A U.S. Marine is the first actual combat casualty, having been shot in an advance on an oil field in southern Iraq. As many as 30 oil wells are reportedly on fire, not oil fields, but oil wells. In western Iraq, 2 airfields have been seized by U.S. forces. Other American units are moving north toward Baghdad. As for Saddam Hussein, U.S. officials say they now believe he was the man seen delivering a televised, possibly pre-recorded speech shortly after the first wave of U.S. air attacks Wednesday night. Those officials also say that they are convinced Saddam and one of his sons were in the Baghdad bunker targeted that first night. There's no confirmation of this. The whereabouts of Saddam Hussein and his sons and their conditions still not known at this hour. Joining us now is CBS News national security correspondent David Martin at the Pentagon. David, what's the very latest?
Well, on the ground, the latest is that the 3rd Infantry Division has reached the Euphrates River, and that Special Forces who were operating ahead of the 3rd Infantry Division have actually seized intact at least one of the bridges over the Euphrates. So that puts the U.S. Army about 1/3 of the way to Baghdad here in just we're still less than 24 hours from the time when the 3rd Infantry Division crossed into Iraq. In the air, it is clear we are very close to the start of an all-out air campaign, the so-called shock and awe, which had been advertised before the start of the war, but has yet to materialize. But those B-52s, which you mentioned as taking off from Britain, are only part of a huge package which is in the works, and I think we'll probably see that start to go into action here fairly shortly, Dan.
David, the questions continue to flow about whether Saddam Hussein possibly was hit the other night. Now, institutionally, CBS News has moved to a classic agnostic position about this. That is, we neither believe it nor disbelieve it. What is one to make of this? The government, on the one hand, says, yes, it was Saddam Hussein on the videotape. On the other hand, they say we hit him in the bunker, and the Washington Post, at least, quotes some intelligence sources saying he was carried down on a gunner. What does anyone to make of this?
Well, the first thing you can make of it is that Saddam is very good at deception. What I know, or what I think I know, is that the U.S. government is confident that not only Saddam, but his 2 sons were in the bunker on that opening night of the war. This bunker, it was a compound, and there were 2 houses, and underneath one of the houses was a bunker. They hit that compound with about 3 dozen cruise missiles and 2 2,000-pound bunker buster bombs. They did a job on that compound, and they believe that Saddam Hussein was in there. Therefore, they believe that Saddam Hussein was killed. But you have the evidence, on the other hand, of that speech and the voice analysis, which says, yes, that probably is the real Saddam speaking, and not a double. So you have any number of possibilities. He pre-taped the interview. He really was killed in the bunker. It wasn't Saddam in the bunker. It was a double in the bunker, or the intelligence was simply wrong from the get-go. And you know, the bottom line is you can't prove Saddam is dead, so you have to proceed as if he were alive, although there remains precious little evidence that he's running things anymore. And of course, that's half the game there, to get him out of control of that regime, because that will make it easier to convince other Iraqi officials that it is safe now to surrender they're in more danger from the Americans if they don't surrender than they are from Saddam if they do surrender.
David Martin talking live from his office in the Pentagon. And we're on the air here at CBS News, one, to bring you up to date on events which include elements of the U.S. Army proceeding toward Baghdad. They may be, at this point at least, the lead elements halfway or better to the outskirts of Baghdad. We don't know exactly where they are, and if we did, we might not tell you. But it's on the ground, little resistance has been encountered, some has been encountered, but the roll toward Baghdad is well underway. In the air, it hasn't been announced, but it's widely known that B-52s took off this morning for air raids over Iraq, which are expected to come sometime in the early afternoon, if not sooner. That's where we are. And with that in mind, we go now to the Kuwaiti-Iraq border, and CBS News correspondent Byron Pitts, who's with the elements of the 1st Marine Division. Byron?
Well, Dan, I'm at a secret U.S. air base near the Iraqi border with a helicopter squadron, Marine helicopter squadron from Camp Pendleton, California, HMLA 169, the Vipers. Pilots have been returning from missions today saying they're moving further north into Iraq, that they have hit targets, as they say, put steel on target near and around the city of Basra in southern Iraq. As the pilots return to base here, we've noticed that some of their weapon system is missing. It's been used. Hellfire missiles and TOW missiles have been fired. Weapons used to take out tanks and smaller vehicles. The pilots tell us they've encountered very little resistance. In many cases, they say, flying some 50 feet, just 50 feet off the ground, they've come across Iraqi soldiers, many with their hands up in the air, surrendering to these Cobra pilots. Others, they say, they've watched Iraqi soldiers, once they see the Cobras moving in on them, jump out of their vehicles, turn around, and start running back north. They have encountered some resistance, though none of any great significance. There are at least 2 Cobra helicopters here with bullet holes in them. One Cobra pilot has one Cobra helicopter has a bullet hole in the cockpit. We spoke with the pilot when he returned. He said as he was returning from his mission, there were some Iraqi soldiers on the ground who opened fire on him. The bullet went through his cockpit. He turned back around, and as he put it, the guy who shot me didn't live to tell about it. Dan?
Byron, what do we know? We know the Marines took this small port city, not Basra, the main southern port, in the last 24 hours. What do we know about the force that is piercing deeper into southern Iraq and what their mission is?
Well, according to the pilots that we've spent time with, Dan, they say they've made considerable progress over the past 24 hours. Initially, at one point, they say they were some 25 miles in the country. Now they say they've made some efforts as deep as 75 miles into the southern portion of Iraq. One of their primary missions initially was to protect those oil fields that you mentioned earlier. They say that job has been done. Those servicemen who were killed, the 4 American crew from that 46 helicopter and the 8 British commandos, they were part of an operation to insert British commandos, hundreds of British commandos, into sites near and around those oil fields. After that mission was aborted, when that helicopter went down, they returned later and completed that mission, saying now that they have taken control of those oil fields they were concerned about, while many were set on fire before they were able to get into position. Dan?
Byron Pitts reporting live from a secret airfield along the Kuwaiti-Iraqi border and with the U.S. Marine Cobra helicopter unit. This is the scene in Baghdad right now. It is just past 7:30 p.m. And that pause, I don't know whether those are air raid sirens or not. They don't sound like the sirens. This is a call to prayers. These are a call to prayers. 7:30 in Baghdad. It's quiet, and it has been all day. And let's just watch and listen for a moment, because later in this day, we're going to see and hear quite a different scene. certain eeriness to the sights and sounds of Baghdad at 7:30 at night. Baghdad has been hit twice, 2 separate occasions in the last 2 days, and fair to say it expects to be hit again today and perhaps soon. We turn to CBS News military analyst, retired General Joe Ralston, just recently retired. Welcome back, General.
Thank you, Dan.
Put the whole situation in context for us. We have B-52s taking off from England. We have elements of the 3rd U.S. Army Infantry Division. Where they are exactly, we don't know, but they're well on their way to the gates of Baghdad. Tell us what you consider to be the story of the day and the story of this hour.
Well, let's go back to the overall objective. We want to capture the weapons of mass destruction, and you want to rid the leadership that is currently there. The U.S. has no desire to destroy any more of the things in Iraq than is absolutely necessary. So if, with this leadership vacuum that appears to be there, that you can somehow have a permissive invasion, that is clearly preferable. But we don't know how that's going. And the fact that you have heard that B-52s have taken off, let's talk about 3 different possibilities of these B-52s. They carry the air-launched cruise missile, the air-launched version of Tomahawk, if you will. They don't have to go to Baghdad to launch that. They could launch that several hundred miles away. But it could be used against a very heavily defended target and a command and control bunker. They carry the satellite-guided bombs. There, the B-52 would have to overfly the target, whether it's Baghdad or whether it's something else. But nevertheless, they can take out very accurately command and control centers. And thirdly, they carry huge numbers of the so-called dumb bombs that you could use against fielded Iraqi forces that has a devastating impact on their morale and their fighting ability. So we don't know what those B-52s may have as a mission. But
We do know they're in the air now, but we don't know what their mission is.
I think that's all we know. They're in the air, and we don't know what their mission is. But it depends on how, if negotiations is the right word, discussions with the Iraqi existing leadership, if that is not going in the right direction, then it may be time to give that a little push in the right direction.
I want to go to the map, General, and help the viewers understand where the ground situation is at the moment and why. That U.S. Marines and some British forces have been operating in this area, the port area, if you will. Basra, the main port, and the only one really we're talking about, but the smaller port has been captured. Basra, as I understand, is encircled, but not yet, at least, has been captured. Now, we had a 3-pronged assault when they jumped off. U.S. Army, British ground forces, and U.S. Marines, just roughly this way. Now, at last report, the 3rd Infantry Division, Jim Axelrod, our correspondent who's embedded with them, reported that what they were doing is that they were moving west of the Euphrates River. Pointing out for our viewers, the Tigris River is over here. The Euphrates here, they come together roughly in this area with the Al-Shut River combination running down in here. So the 3rd U.S. Infantry Division, roughly here. Now, many had expected for them to cross the Euphrates River to get into the Mesopotamia Valley and come up this way. But now there are indications that they're staying west of the river. The purpose of that would be what? To avoid as much contact as they could so they can keep on rolling toward Baghdad? Help us understand why they're remaining west of the river.
Well, I think you've got, again, multiple objectives here. Number one, someone sooner or later needs to get to Baghdad so that you can make sure that the current leadership regime is not in power. Now, the tactical commanders on the ground have to figure out what is the best route to do that. Whether you cross the river or don't cross the river, there are 1,000 elements that go into that decision. And that's something that the on-the-ground commander has to work on. The Marines, the UK forces, 3rd ID, they also have an objective of getting to the oil fields, which I think they have done certainly some parts of it there.
Well, on our map, the main oil field will be the Ramallah oil field, right, which is roughly in this area down here.
Right, but that is a prime objective, is to get there and make sure that you can minimize any destruction that Saddam Hussein and his people may want to carry out against that oil field.
Pointing out that while there are reports of oil wells on fire, we've had no reports of any entire field being on fire. And one of the four main mission objectives in the early going was to secure those oil fields, not only the ones down south, but the ones up north. And we know that U.S. airborne units have been operating up in here for about 24 hours. One of their main roles is to prevent the blowing and the setting of flame of those airfields up there. But go ahead on the ground. So it's possible that the 3rd Infantry will at some point cross the Euphrates River and not stay west of it on the way to Baghdad?
That's a decision for the tactical commander on the ground to make, and he will have that option as to how he wants to do that. And he will look at a lot of factors. What are the array of enemy forces? What is their will to fight? What are the bridging requirements that you need to cross the river? And so there are just a lot of factors that go into that tactical decision as to what route he may take as he is en route to Baghdad.
Well, we know, thank you, General, and we'll be checking back in with you, of course, and we know that in at least one instance, what was described as a not extended but fierce fight had happened somewhere along that route that the U.S. Army 3rd Infantry has been taking. We're hoping to get more details of that as the day goes along. The overall picture here, B-52s in the air. In the air is the sense that a big airstrike is coming somewhere in Iraq sometime in the early afternoon and perhaps sooner. It's one reason we're on the air. On the ground, so far, so good from the position, from the outlook of the U.S.-led forces. In fact, the latest from the wire services indicate that the advance toward Baghdad, at least on the part of the 3rd Infantry, is, quote, well ahead of schedule. Mark Phillips is in Kuwait City, where another alert has sounded, and there are reports of another missile having been knocked down by the U.S. Patriot missile defense system. Mark, are you there?
Yes, I am, Dan. In fact, there have been 2 alerts here today. It's been relatively quiet, I have to stress, after the 7 alerts we had yesterday. That may be a function of the line of contact moving north as the American thrust moves up into Iraq proper. Both of the alerts here were this morning. During one of them, there was an attack, a launch by the Iraqis of a missile toward some facility, and we're not clear which one, in Kuwait. And that missile was intercepted and destroyed by a Kuwaiti operated Patriot missile battery. The Kuwaitis having put out information saying that they intercepted the missile up in the north of the country and that they are now examining its remains to see just what type it was. It's significant, though, now that as more information has come out about all of these missile attacks, and I think we're up to 9 now, that these do appear to have been short-range ballistic missiles. This is the way they're being described by military sources, both Kuwaiti and American here. And that, of course, is significant because they're not using the word Scud. And if these are short-range missiles, the ones that we're talking about today, are said to have been in the range of 60 miles, then that does fall within the limits of the sorts of weaponry that the Iraqis were allowed to have, and does not exceed the limits, and does not then supply evidence that Saddam had missiles that were prohibited and weapons that were prohibited by various UN resolutions. But it's also interesting in terms of the targeting of those missiles. The 2 late ones last night that we talked about yesterday were directed towards, it seems, a Kuwaiti petroleum refinery down the coast from here. There does appear to have been targeting not just of the military, but of Kuwaiti industrial, and very important, of course, this being an oil-producing country, very important industrial facilities here in the country. The Iraqis, of course, having been furious and using all kinds of invective to describe the Kuwaitis. Today they call them donkeys, in fact. And very much anxious to teach the Kuwaitis a lesson for having harbored this invasion force, which is now, of course, plowing its way through Baghdad. The other large news here has to do with the other thrust of this campaign, which is the thrust toward the south city of Basra and the oil fires and the pall of smoke that had enveloped this place as a result of that. Dan?
Mark Phillips reporting live from Kuwait City, where the U.S. Patriot anti-missile defense system apparently has knocked down another missile of some description. General Joe Ralston, there's been a mystery about what kind of missiles Saddam Hussein is firing into Kuwait. They've hit nothing so far. At least 3 of them have been knocked out of the sky, reportedly by the Patriot missiles. Do Saddam Hussein's forces have the Chinese Silkworm missile, which was available on the world market? And could these be silkworms? There's been some speculation about that.
Well, they clearly have had Silkworm missiles for a number of years. I have no indication if that is what they're using this time or not, but it's certainly a possibility. He also has the Al-Samud 1 missile. He has Scud missiles, and the Al-Samud 2 missile, he destroyed some of them, but he still had a few of those left. So I'm not sure what kind it is. There are numerous possibilities.
And an urgent has moved from the Associated Press with information that we've carried earlier on CBS News, confirmation that Allied forces now have full control of what's called a key site in Iraq, that Qusar. Now that's down in the bottom part. If you can go to the map, we said before, it's right on the border of Kuwait and Iraq. Basra is the big port. It has been, at last report, encircled Basra, but Qusar has been taken. Also, the British Defense Ministry says that a total of 7 oil wells have been set afire in southern Iraq, not the 30 oil wells that had been previously reported. And the good news here is that there's been no report of any whole oil field being up in flames. Some individual oil wells, but not any oil fields. Another key American military objective, of course, is northern Iraq, and U.S. forces have been active there over the last 36 to 48 hours. Alan Pizzey, our correspondent, is there to give us a view of what's happening. Alan?
Well, Dan, things may have been going well on the southern front, but there's a bit of a hang-up here in the north, and the problem is not the Iraqis, it's the Turks. They've been insisting on a lot of extensive documentation for the overfly rights for U.S. planes, which their parliament voted was okay. Now they're asking for a lot of documentation, which of course the United States does not want to give them, but more significantly, they want what they call clearance, good clearance, to allow their forces to enter Kurdish-controlled areas of northern Iraq, and that's a non-starter because the Kurds are absolutely insistent if Turkish forces cross the border into northern Iraq, they will fight them. Now, they're not kidding on this. It may seem illogical from our point of view, but they are adamant. They know they will not have any Turks in this area. They're very frightened of the Turks taking them over. And you can't dismiss the Kurds. Their Peshmerga forces are fierce. They may be lightly armed, but they're fierce and determined, highly motivated fighters. And they say they're more than willing to act under U.S. command, but all bets are off if the Turks come in. And the Kurds bring more than a bunch of crazy guys who want to fight. They also bring allies. CBS News learned today from a very well-placed Kurdish source that tribal leaders from around the area of Mosul, that's one of the key oil cities that's an objective of the U.S. forces coming in this way. The tribal leaders from around there have sent representatives to meet with Masoud Barzani, one of the main leaders, to offer to switch loyalties to come on side and support the U.S. forces coming in. So that's not something that can be dismissed, Dan.
Alan Pizzey reporting from northern Iraq. Let's go to the map because another round of explosions have rocked the northern Iraqi city of Mosul. Now, let me say to you that in Mosul, that's not where Alan Pizzey is. He is south of there. But Mosul, this is at least the 3rd time that explosions have been reported. We do not know who set off those explosives, nor for what purpose. But keep in mind what Alan was explaining there, that the Turks are very worried about the Kurds in this general area of Iraq because the Kurds want their own independent country, and there are many Kurds in Turkey. The Iranians also worry about that same thing. Now, one reason a U.S. force, I paused because it is an airborne force, but that doesn't mean that they parachuted many people in there, if indeed any, although there were reports of some parachuters going in. But nonetheless, the U.S. has moved a force in this area basically for 3 reasons. It'll not be moving on Baghdad. The reason this force has moved in this general area was, number 1, to protect the oil fields. There's another big oil field up in here. Number 2, it wants to try to keep the peace in this complicated situation between the Kurds, the Turks, and Saddam Hussein's forces. So that's the reason some U.S. forces are operating up in this area. There are still disagreements between the Turkish and U.S. sides about the terms under which Turkish troops would be allowed to cross their northern frontier with Iraq and come into this Kurdish area. Yes, it's a complicated situation, but it's also very important. Important not only in the current combat to subdue the forces of Saddam Hussein and to have a regime change, but also to keep the peace once this early combat has finished. We go now to Scott Pelley, who's along the Kuwait-Iraqi border. Scott?
Dan, this was the jumping off point earlier today of the big, massive armored challenge to Iraq. The American 3rd Infantry Division, American Marines, British forces all rolling in mass over the border this morning. Before they did that, there was a tremendous artillery barrage overnight. Let me show you just a little bit of videotape of that artillery barrage. It went on for hours and hours. American and British tanks and artillery pieces firing on Iraqi positions around Basra, the large second city. And then by dawn's early light this morning, we had U.S. Marine Cobra helicopters patrolling up and down the border area, mopping up whatever light Iraqi resistance there was. Following that, we had the big armored advance. Heavy earth-moving equipment hit the sand berms, cut big holes into the sand, and then that let the British and American tanks and armored personnel carriers and fighting vehicles through. They are well into Iraq, Dan, as you've already reported, and so far the resistance seems to have been very light. Dan?
Scott Pelley reporting live from along the Kuwait-Iraqi border. Updating what we know at this hour. B-52s have left England, headed for Iraq. This could mean a night of heavy bombing ahead somewhere in Iraq. U.S. ground forces, primarily the U.S. Army's 3rd Infantry Division, have penetrated deep into Iraq, staying so far west of the Euphrates River. The United Kingdom, and I'll pause to read you a bulletin. The United Kingdom says all key components of southern Iraqi oil fields are safe. What you're looking at now is a picture of Baghdad. It was taken some hours after the last hit on Baghdad. And what we are waiting for now is to see what this armada of B-52s may be up to in the coming hours. It's known that they took off. It's not known where they're headed. It's not known whether they are part of a larger force. All of these things are unknown. We were talking about the ground forces, that one of the smaller ports, one of the 3 ports, not the largest one, Basra, but Qadar, has been taken on the border of Kuwait and Iraq, and the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division is maneuvering west of the Euphrates River as it drives toward Baghdad. You know, there was early talk that U.S. forces could reach the outskirts of Baghdad in maybe, quote, 3 or 4 days. There's now some indication that they are ahead of schedule and that they may be on the outskirts of Baghdad in another 24 to 36 hours. Yes, that's speculative, but extrapolating from the quickness of their acceleration in their movements, that's entirely possible. We'll watch developments there. And that's the latest on American war. Coming up next, NCAA basketball, but we'll be here all day monitoring events. When news breaks out, we'll break in.
This is CBS.
For some people, losing weight is about losing inches. But for many, it's not just inches. It's also about health. Weight loss can help lower your blood pressure, cholesterol, and blood sugar. Exercise and diet are important, but not always enough. Visit weightlossbasics.com or call now. You'll learn about a different kind of medication that helps you lose weight smartly and safely. One that's proven effective in clinical studies. Get all the facts to discuss with your doctor, including an evaluation tool to help you and your doctor determine if this medication is right for you. So get started today. You'll also get a special trial offer. Go to our website now to learn about a weight loss medication unlike any other, because the benefits of losing weight aren't just measured in inches.
This is News Channel 5 at midday.
Good morning, I'm Vicki Yates sitting in for